this is the business of entertainment, is the bread and circuses. And so they're kind of, they put out enough that's coherent that you keep hanging on to it. But actually, the story that wants to be told is the story of our times, which is we need to resist fascism together, and we need to lay down our hero plot lines and our love story plot lines and let them be there, but in service to the liberation plot line, not the other way around.
Hello and welcome to the Stoner Story Witch. I am your host, Kristyn. I am so grateful to be recording, hosting, and editing this podcast on the lands of the Chorotega people, colonially known as Costa Rica. Today's podcast is with my teacher, mentor, and friend, Carmen Spagnola, where we are going to be reviewing the events of Severance Season 2. You can check out our episode from the Season 2, Episode 3, where we discussed the first season of Severance. Today's episode, however, is going to be a little bit different than our first episode together, which was more of a traditional interview where I sent Carmen questions ahead of time. Today's podcast was recorded more like, let's just try to have a conversation among friends about, what were the sensations and emotions that we had while we were watching, what parts of the season were particularly resourcing for us, and just kind of like other little tidbits that felt worthy of being witnessed by the other one. And those three questions we actually talk about at the very beginning, because I learned those questions from Carmen through the work that I have been a part of in her Numinous Network for the last going on 4 years now. And not to mention, those questions were also a part of the curriculum that she talked about in her facilitator training, which I took in 2024. And I highly recommend that for anyone who is interested in more attachment-oriented, trauma-informed, neurodivergent friendly ways that we can be facilitating spaces in these continually turbulent times that we live in. So let me introduce Carmen Spagnola officially. Carmen Spagnola is a Le Cordon Bleu trained chef turned trauma recovery practitioner, clinical hypnotherapist, and kitchen witch. She is the author of Spells for the Apocalypse, Practical Magic for Turbulent Times, released in 2025, as well as The Spirited Kitchen, Recipes and Rituals for the Wheel of the Year, released in 2022. Carmen is the host of the Numinous podcast and founder of the Numinous Network, an online learning and support portal for people healing from trauma through a cross-pollination of somatics, attachment, and nature-based spirituality. So having already had this conversation with Carmen and being in the editing phase, I just want to say that what really stood out to me as, I guess my takeaway of this conversation is how a story like Severance, but certainly not exclusive to Severance, can take these liberatory or revolutionary storylines and co-opt them or appropriate them in ways that will still ultimately feel good for the white gaze. As much as I was watching the show and season 2 pulls out more racial themes than we necessarily saw in season 1, or it was just a little bit more ambiguous, the role that race played in this world of Severance, and fully naming that Carmen and I are two white ladies as we engage in this conversation. But just the dysregulation that can happen in the nervous system of viewers as we are taking in shows that are taking place in dystopian worlds, such as Severance, that then there's almost this acceptance that when we kind of get back into that like comfy, and the white guy and the white lady end up together in spite of the fact that there are bodies of culture that are now on the line or that are unaccompanied in this scary world. And so what really felt meaningful was to have a conversation with someone about our sensations, emotions, about what was resourcing, and being kind of like gently reminded that as much as I may intellectually want to combat the co-opting of these liberatory stories that will then ultimately kind of flip the script in the end, my body still responded to it in a way that felt comforting in the end. And to me, that feels like a really scary and also friendly reminder of what it takes, what is at stake when we are not attuned to how our bodies are conditioned to respond to certain injustices or certain stories getting repeated. And I hold that really tenderly as I've been editing this podcast and noticing that temptation of almost wanting to go down this like shame spiral of, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that my body would respond this way, and just accepting that, of course my body would respond this way, because the writers know that the writers ended the season in this particular way so that I could feel a sense of closure. And it's not inherently a bad thing that I would let my body rest in a state of relief, and being really critical of, at the expense of who, at the expense of what am I trading my relief, my settling, my feeling grounded. And it just felt really lovely to have someone else that I could dive into this conversation and feel really well held and well companioned. And I think that is a huge part of why I have been a member of the Numinous Network for the last 4 years, and the compassionate work that Carmen is bringing into the world. Because you guys, we gotta be fighting fascism together, and we gotta be aware of how our bodies can be comforted by these old stories that maybe are actually conditioning us in ways that we're not aware of, and that maybe we wouldn't consent to. And so I think that's the question that I'm sitting in here as I'm continuing this story-based podcast, as just my own little white nervous system. So it is my hope that stories can be a practice ground for exploring what happens when the sensations and emotions that are occurring in my body are at odds with the values that I want to live out, and being aware of it and building up some sort of resilience to recognizing when there is that disconnect, and then being really curious about what is it that I would need in order to live out in better alignment with what it is that matters to me. I'm offering this podcast here in the hopes that there will be some part of it that resonates with you, some little nugget that you can sit with that can help you find some meaning or coherence in the confusing world that we live in, help you reach for connection in some way. I would love to hear from you. If there are any comments or questions, you can always email me at stonerstorywitch@gmail.com. I would love to know what resonates with you. But without any further ado, here's my conversation with Carmen. Welcome back, Carmen Spagnola, to the Stoner Story Witch.
Thank you. Aside from your husband, have you ever had anyone back on as a guest so far?
I think my best friend Jamie as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's inner circle, but I feel
yes.
very honored to be invited back as a return guest. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. And I am so flattered to include you in my inner circle. And I also just want to say, like, I feel like a big spark of this podcast in general has come just from the work that I've done with you on the Numinous Network, going on 4 years pretty soon, I think.
Yes, April 23rd. It's my 4-year anniversary of the network. Very exciting.
That's so exciting. Oh my gosh, this month. That's great. my very first exposure to you, I don't know if I ever told you this. I still am a big Hadestown fan, and like Persephone, and somebody had recommended your Learning to See in the Dark podcast,
Yes.
on which I will definitely link to in the show notes, because it's like this kind of restorying of the Persephone myth. Which I also just feel like we're going to talk about Severance, and I feel like Severance is has very much Hadestown vibes, because everything is related to everything I like. I can relate to Hadestown. But you mentioned in both that podcast and then also in your online wilderness quest that you did during COVID, this series of questions of your bloodlines, milk lines, and storylines. And this idea of storylines like really cracked me open in this. It enabled me to interact with a story, with the idea of a story, in a way that I don't think I ever really had before. That like archetypes or tropes or whatever like can actually be a companion, be a resource, be a guide. And I think it really, like, your work has really informed one of the questions of the Stoner Story Witch, which I'm going to ask you because this is your second time on the pod, which is just a general question of like, what stories have guided or companioned you in your liberation journey? Like, what comes to mind if I were to say, like, what are some of your storylines, Carmen?
Well, 100% the story of Persephone's journey underground and the reclamation of that story through the work of mythoarchaeology and feminists and scholars like Maria Gimbutas and Charlene Spretnak, who very much informed my restorying of the Persephone myth. Now, what I love about that myth is like, now I identify with Demeter. You know, yes. and so this is a myth that has legs. And so inhabiting not only a retelling of that story and contextualizing it as what we think of as the Persephone myth, as the rape of Persephone or the abduction of Persephone, is a patriarchal overlay. If we situate that story back in its time and place, we know that it goes, it extends way further back before patriarchy. And so that story is a response to patriarchy. It's a response to what's happened. And so we don't know exactly what the story sounded like before patriarchy, but we have some clues. And so now I feel like not only was it really valuable to reclaim that story and become a very public witch and a public feminist myself, but now I really enjoy occupying the Demeter perspective. And I've long wanted to rush ahead and be the Hecatean perspective and inhabit that role. Like I'm turning 50 this year. I can't wait. Every time I get a new silver hair, I'm so excited about it. I really want to dye my hair silver, but my husband's like, no, I want to love you through all your seasons. And I'm like, fuck, I really want to be a crone. And I want it to be so long. And I have this like particular curse to this astrologer, Georgia Nichols, who's like Canada's sweetheart, favorite astrologer for many decades. She did a reading for me like in the 90s, and she was like, oh, you're Pisces rising, so you'll always look older when you're younger and younger when you're older. And of course, when I was younger, I enjoyed looking older, but now I'm like, no, it's like I'm being cursed with looking younger than I really am. Hate that. Anyway, but I also do recognize the wisdom of, as Ruben says, like, enjoying the season that I'm actually in, which is very much the Demeter transition. And also, thinking of quest, my first experience with questing was with Sparrow Heart. And I was really I was conflicted about questing in the desert, because that isn't like my natural ecosystem. And I remember him saying, well, Carmen, if you're going to really learn to love the earth, you have to learn to love the earth in all her faces. And so I was like, oh, okay, desert. But it's like good for me because now I actually live in the desert. And so again, I that story of being the initiate and being initiated multiple times in your life. And now, though, I'm like, I'm not the fool card, Now I am like I don't know, something else. I don't know what I am. I don't know which card I am exactly, but well, I guess I would say I'm a little bit hanged man right now. Anyway, so yeah, Persephone, the stories of the earth, of the 4 seasons of the human journey, the tarot, these kinds of stories are really really big for me. It's funny because like as a Gen X kid, I look back at the stories of the 80s that I loved, and I just can't believe how much patriarchy and misogyny and heteronormativity and all of that was like, it was so blatant and so foundational. But, I would say like I was really influenced by the movie Say Anything with John Cusack and Ione Skye. Lloyd, oh, Nolan Boyd. Anyway, I can quote a lot of that movie, but I really love that movie because there's like a whole countercultural narrative in it. And it's like a love story, but like I always liked the kind of quirky, edgy, weirdo guys. I married one. And so I do. It also had like a whole storyline of just like the rug being pulled out from under the illusion of quote unquote care offered by established, white, middle upper class aspiring patriarchal, patronage. Like it was like a great kind of anti-capitalist narrative. So I definitely feel very shaped by certain stories, and they live with me for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting watching one story and finding weird. The story that companioned me in Severance, I think I briefly mentioned it to you, was Titanic. I kept on getting all these Titanic references, and that is probably one of my, which I'll just have to do a different episode to just talk about Titanic, because I could talk about that. Although I will just say, like, I did have a full with all the wildfires in LA, and I saw like a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio getting on like a private jet to like, and I was just like, dude, like, did you learn nothing from being Jack Dawson? Like, you are being such the Billy Zane character right now of like only women. Like, I'm just like, this is absurd. Anyway, just like, oh, well, yeah. That's, I guess, what wealth and fame will do to you. Like,
yeah. The cautionary tale. He's living it.
Yep. Anyway, also happy Mercury retrograde. I realize we only record podcasts on Wednesdays and Mercury retrograde. So I'm hoping that this all goes well for us to be able to have a coherent conversation.
I have been propitiating Mercury so devotionally for so long that I feel quite favored by Mercury. So I feel like, not to say that I'm inoculated from anything bad happening, but, stand close to me, stay with me, get behind me. I've got this.
Okay. I'll be under your wing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm thinking of for today is I had a couple of thoughts from in this Mercury retrograde of revisiting a little bit of our conversation that we had in our last conversation from season 1. Just any thoughts that might have related to that. And then I also was curious if you wanted to kind of use the model that you use in the Numinous Network and that you've done in the co-healing pods. There's like 3 very simple questions, but are also quite profound questions that I find I have to, when I use them in my facilitation work, I have to really like model. But the questions are, what sensations or emotions like did you experience through, in a particular exercise or from a poem or what have you? And then what was resourcing to you? So like, what was like, it's essentially like, how did you feel? What did you like? And then just like, what else? Like, what else would you like to have witnessed? What else feels, juicy to talk about? But I did actually just want to, before we just use these questions, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share like why you use these questions or how it is that you use these, and so that if people are curious to join the network and be like, oh, what is this about? Or if you wanted to speak to that a little bit before we jump in.
Sure. Yeah. This particular coalescing or synthesizing of various trainings I've done in attachment and trauma-informed work and facilitation all came together, particularly in the age of Zoom. Now, I was a pretty early adopter of Zoom. I've been working primarily on Zoom since like 2014. And so when the pandemic happened and people were moving onto Zoom, I was like, oh, finally, great. Everybody's going to know Zoom etiquette and how to do things. And yet, as many people, I'm sure, can agree, there's so much really poor facilitation on Zoom. Like, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
So over the years, I've kind of figured out, like, if you're going to put somebody into a breakout room with someone, this is going to be a moment of like pretty profound dysregulation, even if you're very confident. It's a social bid. It's an attachment exercise. And one of the things that can help is really consistent structure and a real tight container, especially for people who are neurodivergent and are going to bring perhaps a little bit more anxiety to this interaction of like, do I mask? How much do I mask? How do I mask? That kind of thing. And what I want people to do is know exactly what we're going to do. So there are very few prediction errors. Most people want to know what to expect, but especially there are various expressions of neurodivergence where like getting into open space is like super terrifying. So what we do first is we always self-regulate. And so noticing and naming is we self-regulate first before we ask someone to like move into an intimacy risk of like, what did you think of this? Or let's have a discussion in a small group. Noticing and naming like what you experienced or what you're noticing just based on what you just heard is very self-regulating. So we use that first query. What did you notice with sensation and emotion? Just so people can pause, gather their thoughts, notice and name, and have that moment to track and attune to themselves. And then again, before we move to anything revelatory, any self-disclosure, any like needing to be put on the spot or feel like you have to perform, like what's the right answer, or how is this person going to receive me? The first thing we do is we dose the field with some resource. So we're scanning for safeness. And that makes us feel more confident if we're like, oh, this is a thing that I liked and it felt good for me. So it's like when we scan for safeness, we can, it's like we're soothing ourselves. Right? Mm-hmm. Even if this person doesn't receive me well, this is a thing that resources me. But it's also nice to hear what's resourcing other people. When we dose the field with more safeness, we resource everyone. Even if it's just like, oh, that person seems really nervous, but they just shared with me something they liked and then they kind of relaxed a little bit. Or they shared with me something that was resourcing and like, I feel more relaxed because I know they're resourced. This is all kind of what's happening in the background with our attachment systems. Mm-hmm. And then we go into the intimacy risk of, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Like, what did you really think? Or what else do you know? Then we see if we want to dip the toe into more self-disclosure. So it's just a trauma-informed, very somatically based, very attachment-oriented way to enter into conversation with people.
I love that. And so I want to practice using that. I would like, and to just like normalize that we can very simply have attachment-based, trauma-informed conversations. And I think I'm hoping that we'll have a juicy conversation if we kind of relate it to this like this story of Severance. So nice. Thank you for adding that context to those questions. Okay, so I re-listened to our podcast together. And first off, I had to chuckle with the bread and circuses bit because you were talking about collapse and bread and circuses. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it literally like bread and circuses in season 2 is literally melon parties and marching bands. It's just like, I don't know. That just felt really, really delightful. you also were just on the cusp of releasing your rituals and remedies for turbulent times, your spells for the
Spells for the
apocalypse.
apocalypse.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And like just noticing like, oh, there were a couple of little rituals. Like they got together to do a ritual for Irv. Even though it was just like this watermelon cutout, still had to be a melon party. And even the connection that Irv had with, I think her name was Felicia in OND, like just like mourning together, just like kind of like speaking to that, like something is gone and we're mourning, we're grieving it. And what I really, really liked was, you know, when at one point I asked you, like, what do we do when there is no escape in fascism? And you said something like, you know, the only response to fascism is to fight, and we can only fight together. You know, we like, it's not something we can do alone. And what I really love is like from looking at how, and we don't even see this until the finale, but how like this journey of Gemma's liberation really took, I counted it out, and if we include like the babysitter for Devin's kid, because we never see that baby, I'm counting like 10 people, including two people that have innies and outies in like 3 different departments. And
plus the entire fucking marching band had to turn on Milton. I mean,
yeah. Like, I mean, I was just like, I mean, and the groundwork was even laid in season 1. Like, I think I want to lay out these pebbles for you, because I was like, okay, I want to count them. We have, in season 1, we have Audi Irv is just painting that elevator, just so that his innie can somehow get the message that this elevator matters. He helps map out that floor. He goes to OND. So we get Felicia. Actually, maybe that's an 11th person if we include that Felicia is giving the instructions of how to get there. And so then he maps that out. He leaves it behind, the map for Dylan. And I will get to this later, but I mean, he sacrifices himself to expose Helena, that she is not who she says she is. We have Dylan, who not just did like, and this was something I know you talked about in the first episode, where it's like, even his amor fati could just be that he's holding those levers in place for the OTC to happen in the first place. And he's doing the same fucking thing with the vending machine. Like, it's like, he's literally just getting his body to just be in this active resistance. He found the map. We have Helly, that when she does finally come back, she seems to really understand how fascism, or like they're trying to separate us, we need to work together. And she is, she is convincing any Mark that we need to save Gemma because we're fucked either way. And then she just, you know, does that whole move with distracting Milchek and locking him in the bathroom. We have Mark's innie and outie that do have to work together. But again, like, if it weren't for Helena or Helly, his innie would have maybe folded. And if it weren't for his sister, who saw that she's alive, like, his outie was going to fold too. So we still have these like, he still kind of needs this like coercion from these women in his life to do that, like Orpheus going into the underworld to save Eurydice. And it wasn't just fucking Orpheus, it's 11 people. I'm still going through.
Yeah.
And then Cobell. Hello, like, they get Cobell to join. Like, I was so skeptical going into season 2 that I was going to enjoy the season as much as I did. But they get Cobell, and then the weird mammalian's nurturance. It was this like weird Deus Ex Machina that, like, I was just like, okay, that was just this weird thing. But then even she comes back, and without her, there wouldn't have been, you know, Mark would have been stuck with that Drummond character. And so there's just such this coherence of how the finale was done to prove your point that we must fight fascism together. That I was like, oh my God, if there were not a season 3, I would be perfectly happy. I did not feel that way after season 1. But I was like, I feel so settled. And like enlivened and well companioned. And so I guess that was a sensation, or maybe that's what resourced me, actually. That was very resourcing. I guess I skipped to the second
Yeah.
question, but
Well, but I feel resourced now. We're just proving the point here. Like, I feel resourced and enlivened seeing how resourced you are, because I did not feel this way through season 2. And I'm like, oh, I am with you. I can see, like, yes, this all makes sense to me, even though I'm stuck in other places. I feel like, okay, there's more resource in the room now for me to like have this conversation, because I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. And also, I get it. I get it. You've got me. I'm with you. Yes, these things were all worth celebrating, and you are describing the most coherent parts of season 2.
yes.
And I hope there's no season 3. I couldn't handle a weird coda to this. I don't want more.
I honestly have had the same kind of thoughts where I'm like, if there is a season 3, like I'm like intrigued to maybe have someone give me like notes on the back of a napkin, kind of like just,
Yes.
but like, do I want to put myself through what I know these writers can do to myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 2 episodes that we didn't see any of, like I call them the Fab Four, right? Like
Right.
or 5, I guess, if we include Milchick. But we had that back to back. It was great. It was great to see the backstory on Miss Casey and Gemma and the Ms. Cobell. But I literally was feeling like kind of this like untethered, or like I just want to see my friends. Like, why are we not seeing my friends?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there was so much. The whole season was rough, and then I don't know, like that the finale enabled
were
me
you
to
happy
feel okay.
with the very last scene?
Okay, so I would say that the sensation or emotion that arose in me in the last scene was that I felt like that poignance. I felt this it was one of my Titanic references, actually, because I was just like, it's like they're running through the halls, and we as the audience know that there's this futility. They had that conversation earlier on, and she's like, I just want more time. But, we're kind of stuck. And I feel like I have spent a lot of time crying over the poignance of that last scene. I really liked that it was like the only time to end it, to have it feel like, and they're choosing joy. They're choosing this minute. Like he doesn't want to die 1 minute sooner than he has to. If he has the opportunity to just run for the sake of running, or I don't know if they're running to somewhere. I don't know if it's a fight or something. Like I don't even need to analyze it. But in this moment, they are like together, and he's not just going to leave. He's not just going to walk away, and he's choosing her. And he still did he didn't even really need to choose between honor and love, because he kind of got to do both. The task was to save Miss Casey. He did it. And then he also gets to choose like this little life that he made for himself, that he like explained to his Audi, like, it's not so bad. We make a life for ourselves. And it's like, I see that as sad, but it's like I don't know. I felt that it was like the closest thing to like joy, even though his shirt is drenched in somebody else's blood. Those like red lights are going. Like it was definitely, there was definitely levels to it.
Okay, I'm going to put it this way. The white people won, and the guy got what he wanted in that moment. And the more interesting story throughout the entire season for me was the race story.
Yes.
Like the role of all of the people of color, but certainly Milchick and I can't remember her name, but the assistant, the board is speaking.
Natalie.
The board is on the line. Natalie, yeah. And then the whole kind of HBCU marching band, and Dylan, and being like, fuck you, Milchick. And that whole thing, oh God, I had so many thoughts, and I was so uncomfortable with how they were dipping us in and then just kind of leaving it with all the ways that whiteness was being enforced and imposed. And so I was not happy with the amount with honestly, by the end, I was like, I'm so fucking done with Mark, innie and outie. Like, you can't just, have a little throwaway sarcasm like, oh, yeah, great. I'm so good. I just had brain surgery. Like, acerbic wit, irony isn't enough anymore. I need these writers to go deeper to make me like him. And frankly, I didn't want Helly and Mark to get what they wanted. I just didn't. I was so mad when I saw Helly come around. I was like, can the white people just be like, we're going to lay it down for the greater good, because there's a whole world out there of this fucked up shit happening.
Yeah.
And we even partnered with our enemy, the no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. I was happy to see that. Like Cobell, yes, we got her backstory, but also like we got to see her be like, we got to take this down. And then I just felt like Mark and Helly just kind of ruined it for their little bit more time. And I was like, you know what? Like, I think that sends a poor message. I didn't like the hero getting to be the hero. I didn't like him getting to be like, huzzah, I make this choice and I send her out. And like, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I wanted more coming down on them. But of course, what would I expect? It's still Hollywood, and they're not gonna do that for us. But yeah, I think of all the, the Black Doctor who was so brilliant to try, all of these characters and their dilemma was so much more interesting to me than Mark's by the end. And then when he did that, I was like, fuck you, man.
I'm glad that you are pushing me back on this, because this story reminded me also, I think I might have mentioned this like in another quick aside, that like my own internalized and the hero wins and that just feels good, especially after such dysregulation in the rest of the season, to be like, oh yay, this feels familiar. This is comfy.
Yes.
What a nice comfy little blanket of white supremacy I can just cozy up in, because this is what I'm taught to like. It's just like in fucking Little Women. It's like, oh good, she gets married in the end, even though the entire point of this thing is that Joe is, I would say, actually a trans man, probably. But anyway,
right? Yeah, we've had this whole critical analysis put in front of us here of ooh, look at all the micro and macro aggressions, and look at the diminishment, and look how gross whiteness is. And then his wife, who's been a woman of color, enslaved, basically a comfort wife. Jesus. I was again, little on the nose here, folks. And then he gets her out and is like, bye, and basically tosses her it some freedom. You send her back to what? With no one to support her anyway. I was really profoundly disappointed, but then also, why was I? Because of course this is it's whatever it is, HBO. And also Ben Stiller, who I know there's multiple minds that come together to create a story, right? But, he likes The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. He likes these, kind of zany stories, and then hero, and it's just oh God, I didn't like the feeling in myself of that familiarity. I was like, no, you did too much to show me how abusive and just it gives me the ick. Everything about Lumen gives me the ick, and you just enabled it to limp along a little longer, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Yeah.
Well, right, because we know that that Apple is not going to actually want
Yes.
So that's why it's we kind of need to be okay, so where are the cracks in the wall here? And that's a huge crack. The one that I was really upset about with the whole, and it was really interesting because I was are they trying to pretend that racism is maybe not a thing because they have Natalie as, a really powerful person. They have Milchick in this position of power, but we have that scene where they're gifting Milchick these, the paintings. So I was okay, this is a huge indicator that like racism is alive and well in this world. The
Yeah.
scene between him and that, I did kind of, I was, because I watched that and I literally was like, I wonder what these actors were thinking, because it's kind of like
Yes.
this, oh, well, well, we'll just make these characters people of color and that will then like make it okay. And it's like, but you're putting them in these positions to enact
Yeah.
the problems of white supremacy, to just
Yeah.
the problem
And
of
it
DEI.
just, that was quite, I mean, that was like brilliantly chilling when they show you the blue eyes. Oh my gosh, it was so chilling. I was like, I literally gasped out loud.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I can't believe we just saw this on TV. This is amazing. This is so good. This is so provocative. But then once again, like, so you bring up Dylan, once again, it's the black male body is physically,
Yep.
trying to hold back and physically putting himself on the line, sacrifice, like it just. And we see a little bit of resistance from Milchek with his, what was it? Devour festulence.
Devour feculence. Yes.
Devour feculence. And then his like barb that he slings back at the Kier animatronic. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I was like, oh, here's the hero. Mm-hmm. And then he doesn't. I was like, you had a choice here. You could have gone another way. And that just, again, that just made it seem like, oh, Apple, or whoever, like the writers. I was like, if you want to give me something satisfying, you're going to turn all of these oppressed people who have internalized the oppression and become the enforcer. You're going to liberate them for me. And they didn't. So that was a miss for me. That would have been a nice ending.
So like the little hope that I have, because we have that scene, we have that scene with the pictures, and then we have this like HBCU style marching band that he brings in, and we know that like he's been given some creative license to do different things on the severed floor. I don't, because we see that scene where he is like, like, let go of your childish ways, grow up, grow. But then he doesn't actually change his speech to adapt according to like this like absolute tone policing that they're doing of him, even though he's absolutely doing what they do and like what they, and like they're all of a sudden kind of changing the script because like I don't know. Anyway, I am like, my hope is that there is this, I just saw a talk with Bayo Akumalafe where he talks about, like how like whiteness cannot actually like whiteness doesn't belong in the apostasy. Like blackness is like what needs to come in. And like he talks about like the fugitive. I'll try to link it in the show notes. But I was just like, okay, so we have this black face paintings that he clearly doesn't like, and this idea of let's put blackface on these white institutions, and like I'm like, but what's he doing is like trying to sneak a little bit of blackness into Lumen. And so I was just like, oh, is there a fucking long game that they're doing here? Like that was my hope. And honestly, like what I really felt was Ragabi. I've been tracking her since season 1, the doctor that is like attempting these reintegration procedures. And I was like, okay, maybe she was low key negligent with Petey, but oh my gosh, she's working with Mark. This is going to be great. And Devin comes in and just does the Karen thing of just, she's dysregulated and is like, I know, let's call Cobell, who like kidnapped my kid, lied about being a lactation consultant, like worked for like, and you're not going to be curious about this black woman who clearly your brother trusted enough to like, are you fucking kidding me? And like that the writers would just be like, this checks out. The public isn't going to be like alarmed by this or upset by this, or and that Ragabi like doesn't just grab Dylan or Devin's phone and smash it, be like, no, you're not calling Cobell. Like she's just like, okay, if you're gonna call Cobell, then I guess I'm just gonna leave. I was like, And so then this was another Titanic reference, because I was like, okay, I understand that like Jack, that there's no room on the door for Jack. Like I get that the plot, like that they have decided that the plot, like we're not going to see Ragabi again until season 3 or maybe never, or I don't know. The powers that be have decided that the better story is one without Ragabi. So that's just like how it had to be. But even if that's how it had to be, did it have to be like the continuous negligence played by a Black woman? Or like, I just was like, had she been cast differently, would more people have been upset by Devin for, but it's like, oh, well, let's, I don't know.
Undermining her credibility. Yeah. It does just make me wonder, like, how many of the writers are Black? How many of the people, like, I'm just so curious about this, because they are dropping some real truth bombs here, but then they're kind of fumbling and not taking them over the line for me. So, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Sorry to mix the metaphor, but, it's like, yeah. Anyway. The sensations and emotions I had through watching season 2 was that I was in a disorganized relationship with the creators, with this world that actually never made me feel good. I liked the characters, except for Irv, but I tended to like the characters less and less as we went along. I enjoyed the Dylan love triangle with Dylan and his wife and Innie and Outie. But yeah, I felt like I was in a gaslighty relationship, that race is a thing, but it's also not a thing. It's, that really bothered me. Seeing Gemma's slavery as an innie and like these multiple options, that again, the comfort wife reference for me, which I'm like, are they aware of this? Like, it just, are they aware of what they are asking this Asian American actress to do, and are they doing this intentionally with this storyline? Could they have cast it differently, or is this a good thing? I just felt like, wow, there's some huge themes here, and it would make a difference to me if I had a little bit more awareness of whether they are being aware or not. So I felt like, am I complicit in something really gross right now? And being like, this is so amazing. But in my body, I just very often felt confused, and I felt more aligned with, the supportive characters. And so I felt very untethered a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I felt very confused and untethered. and even in the end, when, the Game of Thrones woman from Nurturance, Mammalian, Nurturance came back in, I was like, she's so much more humanized, and it was so short that I was like, oh, I wish they'd had more of her to help me get attached to this point, because up to then it was so creepy. It was so Children of the Corn in season 1 or whatever, and then or whenever they came. Gosh, it's such a blur. I can't remember if that was season 1 or season 2, but it was like I needed a little bit more nurturance myself in order to stay connected with these characters, and so that also felt like a miss, as you say, a total Deus Ex Machina. She comes out of the woodwork, and suddenly it all comes together. And it was just like, no, this could have been a much more emotional moment for me if they teased it a little bit more and shown some sweetness between her and a goat. I would have liked to see some sweetness between a person and a goat. Prior to then, it was so cold. I also just felt very, I needed a breath from the moment we discovered that it was Helena, not Helly. Because I definitely was like, oh, wow, Helly doesn't want to lose her friends by telling them what she was doing out there. And I was like, gosh, that seems like a little strong for her, considering she's so, like, I thought she could have come up with like a slightly better story or something. And so then by the time we discover it, it was almost like too long, or I didn't get a breath they didn't process with each other enough for me to process all the ways in which it was like, oh, it wasn't this person. It wasn't Helly, it was Helena. Even then, like, how long has this been going on? I kind of needed a bit more of that. So yeah, I personally found my attachment system really fucked up through the whole thing. And I would go like weeks without watching it. It wasn't like, oh, must see TV where I was right on top of it. I was like, that's okay. I'll come back around to it a little later. There wasn't enough for me to feel that attached, And then when it did happen, like, for instance, we were supposed to be excited about, Helly and Mark S having their little romp under the desks in the storage room or whatever. But I was like, I don't know. This feels a little, I don't know. It felt strangely icky for me. And I needed a little bit more development there with Mark S. To be like, I don't know. It just, there was a lot about it that I just felt like, wow, they're handling pretty intense themes of like sex and intimacy and race and childhood trauma. Miss Cobell's, the journey back to Miss Cobell's, like, I was like, oh my God, what is happening here? I just felt so scared and traumatized and like so many unanswered questions and like, so childhood trauma that's all very foggy in our own brains. They just really made us relive a bunch of the worst of a person's experience and like collective trauma in the field that goes unaddressed. And then they ended it in this very almost cartoonish, that scene and even the graphics that they did to render it more like a Lumen propaganda poster at the very end. I was like, oh man, I am pretty messed up after watching this. I don't know if I like that. Obviously I didn't really enjoy it. And so will I go back for season 3? No, definitely not. Absolutely not. I want to hear what other people have to say about it, but I'm not going to put my nervous system through that again because it's too disorganizing.
Yeah, I think that is very fair to be like, there were a couple times I was like, I don't think I can do this. Now, okay, you just mentioned like everybody but, I think you said everybody but Irv, you liked less and less. Yeah. So is it safe to say that maybe there's something resourcing about Irv?
Yes. Okay. Yes, absolutely. I felt like Irv was the moral center of the story. And I really appreciated that. That also just, what's his name? John, what's his name in real life again?
John Turturro?
John Turturro. I mean, ever since I was a young, impressionable person watching Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, it was like fascinated with John Turturro. He's just constantly, and I think he was in like Miller's Crossing. He's been in so many great shows. He's such a, like, again, iconoclastic actor who takes many different roles and just makes so much more out of them. And I was just captivated by his delivery of Irv and what he did out as an outie and the dinner scenes, I just with Christopher Walken and his partner, I just felt like, okay, we are getting into like the real questions of this world. Like what happens when somebody's, Innie retires kind of thing. And how do they do that? Anyway, I felt he was playing a very dangerous game. And I was relieved that there was somebody who could like keep their eye on the prize and not just do what was good just for them, but like genuinely be like holding the moral center. And, it's like, yes, I want for Irv to go with his dog and have a nice life somewhere far away from wherever Lumen is and find love and all that kind of stuff. Irv was very resourcing for me because I always felt, I never doubted that he was going to put the collective first. Even his innie, who was like, we need to get our work done. We need to do this. He was always trying to herd people together towards what was the moral center in that world.
Right.
And so he was congruent and very consistent for me. And I really appreciated that. And I think just even in life, I don't like flip-floppers. So Mark was pissing me off.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm holding out a little bit of hope that I don't know that we're going to see Irv again. If I watch season 3, I don't know that Irv will make another appearance, but Cobell seemed very surprised to hear that Irv knew about the black elevator and that he had like done drawings. And we know that like her big project in season 1 was like wanting to prove that reintegration was possible. And he just like through Irv's like dream work and like art. And I just felt like he also has this like mysticism. Maybe that's not the right word, but like that I don't know. I just feel like there's the potential for something, some like other spiritual component there.
Well, and Irv is our resistance, right? If there was, like the French resistance, the underground resistance, it's like Irv, he carries it with him wherever he's gone. So I'm resource knowing it still exists in the cosmology of Severance.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really, really like, sensation and emotion and maybe I guess what was resourcing, but in like, I guess a poignant way. Like I remember after the Ortbo where we find like, not just that, I mean, he was so attuned to Helly that of all the other guys, he was the only one that knew that she was actually Helena. Mm-hmm. And we know like, in season 1, I pegged him as kind of like a symbol of death phobia because he was so like, we don't want to die. We don't want to and that's like what really sets us up for Bert's retirement because it's just like, oh, we get that it is this death. We know that he doesn't want to leave. He never wants to retire, like, because it's essentially his death. But like his unequivocal, like the integrity of this group, like us knowing that, and piecing together, he's so fucking smart. He's like, who has the power to send their outie down here? That means you must be an Egan. I must expose you. Like, and he's a fucking martyr. Like,
yeah.
And then, and Milchek is like, you walk away into the forest and just to prove the point, in case we like couldn't remember from season 1, he's even being like, everything you've ever done, your entire memory, your body of work, it's going to be erased. It's going to be as if you, Irving B, have never existed. And it's like, he didn't seem sad. He seemed just like,
yeah.
And like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, we needed more of that. That's what I wanted to see from Mark. I wanted that to be that sort of like, yeah, but that's okay because this is wrong. This is the, like, I don't know, I think we talked about this last time, but this inability to be with the reality and have our own personal diminishment, as Rachel Rice would say, or have an ending to things. Like our death phobia is so intense. I would have liked to have seen more examples. Like that's the thread I want them to bring forward. But of course, again, they're not going to do it because this actually is, as most entertainment is propaganda for capitalism. And so they need to give us they need to let the bread and circuses has to be a little bit of a relief valve for us. So it's like, ooh, possibility model, but not quite. Look at how much happier Helly and Mark seem running down, in this like romantic scene going down than Irv, who just like got sort of summarily put on a train and, had his role just diminished, but they get the heroism. And I just didn't.
They get to prolong their life just that little bit more.
Just that tiny little bit, whereas he did something actually, quite significant. So I would have liked to have seen more rousing sentiment around him. And it's so sad to me that Helly went running around the corner. I was surprised she would because she got it. She was like, we're fucked either way.
Yes.
And I wish we had more time, but this is the right thing to do. Like, you have to do this, Mark. And I was like, yes, redemption arc for Helly. I'm so glad. And then she runs around the fucking corner. I was like, no, this is such a fourth act kind of thing. Like, I did not enjoy that at all. I felt like they
looked back.
could have tied it. Yeah.
He shouldn't have looked back.
Yeah. Shouldn't have looked back. Shouldn't look back. We know this story.
Come
on, dude.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, I fell for it. Like, I felt like in that moment, like, oh, like, okay. Because yeah. So it is interesting how this show does such a great job of like even showing how like the propaganda works, like not just in Lumen, but they like Natalie, and that it was such a small scene, but that scene with Rickon where it's like, we're gonna just like change some of the words in your story to like the selling out, like, just any again, that kind of reminds me, just related back to season 1 with Little Women, that it's like, okay, I have this work, but it's like, but come on, like she needs to be married in the end. And it's like, okay, so like, yeah, this is really good. You'll be very successful. And so like,
you'll make a difference in the lives of the innies, like making it. Yeah, it was very,
we like, they loved your thing, but we're just going to like make it better as opposed to just, yeah. And anyway, so I just was like, okay, so we see this, we know this. And can we have the critical analysis of like what we are watching is also that thing. And being critical. And for me, like, yeah, it's helpful. I mean, I even, after watching the Cobell, I saw, I was like, this is a 37-minute episode. Like, what are we possibly going to do in 37 minutes? But in 37 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, I guess maybe Devin is onto something. Maybe Cobell will be in solidarity. I thought, like, I literally went in 37 minutes, like, what the fuck are you doing, Devin? You Karen? Yeah. Like, oh, maybe this will work out, I guess. And how quick my own like internalized, I don't know, patriarchy or ageism to just like write off Cobell from season 1, like, oh, she's a little nutty, she's a little unhinged or whatever. And then being like, oh, that's just a lot of fucking childhood trauma at the hands of Lumen, and a lot of really disorganized attachment, not just with her aunt, but also like this whole religion and this. And so so I was just like, oh, damn, Kristyn, like, yep, there's your, like, why was I not curious about, I was more curious about, I wanted Ragavi's story. Yeah. I'd already pegged Cobell as like, just, oh, well, she can't be.
She's beyond redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's complicit. And so, well, but okay. Can we like go a little bigger, just like one more time? So, you watch the credits of the show. I can't remember if it's the beginning or the end, but it's like 5th season productions or something like that is the name of it. Every time I saw that, Kristyn, I was like, no, please don't say you're trying to get 5. Please don't say you're manifesting with the name of your business that you want to get 5 seasons out of this show. Please do not do that to me. And so it does make me wonder if, because it seems like there's a core of a story that we've been talking about that looks at capitalism as a form of slavery, which is a race issue and white supremacy issue. That's like this beautiful core of it. And then they've put these kind of enigmatic love stories on top of it. And then it seems like they tacked on this Eurydice looks back kind of thing, or sorry, he looks back at Eurydice. That's her name, right? In the myth, Orpheus and Eurydice. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it does make me wonder if there was a core story that they were like, yeah, but of course we need a little more, salaciousness, or we need a little more love story, or we can't end it that way. We've got to add a little more. It does make me wonder how much there is a story that was trying to be told, and then the capitalism over top. It's like, are we seeing that? Is that why this feels so disjointed? Is that why it feels like there's always these red herrings? Is that why it feels like even the writers sometimes don't really know what they're doing? Because it kind of comes back in the end with this thing that kind of got tacked on that maybe came down from from an executive boardroom somewhere. Like, is that what I'm sensing in the field? Because the core story is so good, but it would be so unsanctioned, and it's so unlikely that that would come through in its pure form. So, I'm hoping that there aren't multiple more seasons and that it even drags on to 5. I'd be shocked if it does. But it was so meta seeing that every time that it was like, right, this is a business, and they want to keep us wanting more. And so this is the business of entertainment, is the bread and circuses. And so they're kind of, they put out enough that's coherent that you keep hanging on to it. But actually, the story that wants to be told is the story of our times, which is we need to resist fascism together, and we need to lay down our hero plot lines and our love story plot lines and let them be there, but in service to the liberation plot line, not the other way around.
Right. Let the stories be companioning us to be locating ourselves and doing the work that we need to be doing, or being like, ooh, this like really rubbed me the wrong way in this show. I'm going to not do that. Like, see, like, I mean, I love the way you talk, like in the Numinous Network, we talk about like locating yourself like on the land that you're on, and what are your identities, and how do you be here in a good way. And I just think like stories can do such a good, like, who am I really in Severance? There's a lot of me that does identify with Helly. Like, I have been in circles where I've been like, I don't know that, like, I want to be in solidarity, but I kind of feel like I have a little bit more power, a little bit more privilege, a little bit like, a little bit more wealth or advantage. And so it's like, like I identify with Helly, and also like, I'm not Ivanka Trump, like it's like, so in reality, am I like, I'm not currently selling my labor for currency. So I'm not even like, I'm not an employee of Lumen. Like, in reality, I'm probably not really even in this show, but okay, who would I aspire to, or what have you? And so like, I don't know. I think it's like so easy I'm remembering like seeing something where like after the election, there was like some, like white lady dressing up as Katniss Everdeen and being like, okay, like, we got to resist. And somebody was like, just so you know, like, if you're in the United States, like, you're not in District 13. This is a Hunger Games reference. Like, you're not Katniss Everdeen. Katniss Everdeen is in Palestine. Like, Katniss Everdeen is actively being, like, genocided or enslaved in these ways, and so like and it's like, yeah, like, can we actually see that, like, okay, what would it look like to be in the position I'm in the location I'm in? And like, maybe that story's written, maybe it's not, but like, how can I see that this story is about a character that I actually haven't met in my day-to-day life? And how can I still be in if I fall in love with this character enough that I want to dress up like them for Halloween or whatever the fuck, like, then how can I show my solidarity in other ways? How can I, anyways, there were people all over Reddit. I joined Reddit to try to promote our other podcast. And I guess Reddit doesn't like the word fascism. So they kept on like, not even like letting any of my, or maybe I don't know. Now that I'm on Reddit, I'm like, God, if people, my hope, my dream, my prayer, my spell is that like, people's urge to find like these like coherent, like these little like Easter eggs and predictions, and like try to like, I don't fucking care. Matt Erickson, I don't like the white guys that are always talking after the show. I don't fucking care if I'm right with what I predict for season 3, because like, I want this story to be what I want it to be, or like, I want people to just like, what do we want? How would I want this story to go? What I did actually complain about the Ragabi thing, and I got like one person who was like, you are analyzing this way deeper than a normal person. And I was like, thank you. I feel so seen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Like, but it's like, I don't know. Like, can we, I don't know. There's a disorganized field in Severance where it's like, if people would take some of that energy to locate themselves within the fascist world that we live in, and not just this imaginary world, like, I don't know. I guess that's the hope and dream of this podcast, is to help people be like, okay, like, can I in a hard moment think like, what would Irv do? And like do that thing, you know? Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, this is so interesting to think like, who would you aspire to be versus who would you be? Like, yeah, I would definitely aspire to be Irv. Who would I be? I'm like scanning through and like, I might actually be Cobell. Like, I don't, like I'm kind of like, because you have to get kind of fucked over by the system before you'll revolt against the system.
Yeah.
And so it's like I had to like do all the right things and then have like a bankruptcy and have like no support, but like just like crickets, tumbleweeds, no help from the people that were in my milieu at that time, and just realized like, oh wow, no, I actually am just like a working class gal who kind of used her smarts to work her way up, but inside this house of cards that doesn't give a shit about me. And now I would like to do my best to like take what I feel is my work and wrest it from those gatekeepers and, bring something else forward. But I wasn't doing that at all. I totally used to believe in like conscious capitalism and stuff like that. And then when capitalism failed me, I was like, oh, fuck you. You guys aren't, not only are you not that conscious, you're not even that compassionate.
Right.
Like, where are you, And so, yeah, that's kind of humbling and a little humiliating to be like, oh, I probably am the person I almost like the least in this whole show.
But what I'm hearing, but you're on a different, but it's not one or the other. Like, okay, so maybe I'm
Right.
Cobell, but I'm Cobell season 4, maybe, like
Right,
I would fucking
exactly.
love it. I just want you to receive, Carmen, that like, I hope that Cobell has like this enters her rage era and like
Right.
totally, like becomes radicalized and
Well, I mean, I hope Cobell enters her identifying with her wounded, abandoned child era, and
that's true.
Becomes like the more loving, nurturing person she was pretending to be.
Yeah.
As the neighbor.
I know, she played that part so well. Mrs. Selvig. I want more Mrs. Selvig.
That's right.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think I'm still just digesting that you like, I feel like you're not Cobell. Like I'm feeling like a pretend, but like you're not Cobell, but I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling a little stunned.
At a different time in my life, like you say, I would hope that I'm Cobell in season 5 or whatever, like that she has a longer arc. I mean, that was 20 years ago for me or whatever, 15 years
that you
ago,
can identify that in my past, this was a role.
Yeah.
Well, and just like and I tried to model on Reddit. I was like, hey, as a white lady, like, I want to say that like the writers were just like kind of expecting us to be okay with Devin just trusting Cobell over being curious
the qualified
about
black woman who was mid-process. Yeah.
But then I'm also like, okay, her brother has a hole in the back of his head. Like, she's dysregulated. I know enough about the reality of white supremacy and my own embodiment in this world to be like, I am not a safe, like, no white person is safe 100% of the time to a person of color. So like me, like allowing that to be a little bit of like a mirror into like, okay, fuck, like I really fucking hate that. And I really want to not be that. And I also like can be humble enough to be like, have I done that in some context in the past? Could it happen to me again if I were really, tired, hungry, stressed, dysregulated, my kid is hurt, like just like we got to admit that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. She was such a Karen, but also the sort of the fortitude of Cobell's shaping by supremacy culture is pretty compelling in an emergency. And so, I think this is how this is also, in that case, it worked out for them, but this is also how we become subject to fascism, right? It's like the sheer power of someone's conviction. So that could have gone very wrong for her. And I think that's, this is for Devin. So this is the message that we want to hold on to, but we can understand how we do become pretty compelled by somebody's conviction, even though Cobell was like, she was offering more questions than answers, right? She wasn't spelling things out, whereas Ragabi was like, I'm literally in the middle of a medical procedure from which he has survived. So if you could just like take it down several notches. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was a good, I think, accurate mirror of what most white people would do.
Yeah.
Freak out and then go towards the most dominating nervous system in the room.
which like you say, it just so happened to work out. Thank goodness. Yeah. And like, let's not let that be the roadmap that we learn from here.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. You're kind of, operating out of that fascist playbook of, like you say, succumbing to, you say that the strongest nervous system or
the most dominant nervous system is going to dictate the tone of that conversation or that whatever happens next.
Yeah. We kind of have been bopping around. I think we got sensations and emotions. We got resourcing. Any other, any other sensations, emotions, witnessing?
No, I think that's it. And I think it's good for us to arrive in this place where I feel safe enough to say there's no way I'm watching season 3. Woo-hoo! And I hope you do so that you can tell me what happens.
I know one way or another we'll get the notes. I don't know what I'll be doing. It's one of the things you do in the it's like knowing yourself enough, having that secure attachment to be like, and I can say no to what I want to say no to, and I'm going to practice by not watching any more of this show.
Yeah, especially when they make capitulation to the status quo feel so good. They made it feel good in the end. It was the music, the scene, just everything about it. I think I also, again, this is somebody on Reddit is going to be like, these 2 white ladies are too woke or something. But it's like literally he's running off with the red-haired girl while his Asian American is like screaming like, oh my God, what just happened? Like, yeah. Like just a second abandonment by your person. Like I was just like, wow, okay. Yeah. I can't be part of this anymore.
And also,
but I hope you will keep me apprised of the notes.
Yeah. Well, and also I'm glad that you say that too, because like, it was nice to see Mark and Gemma fall in love in that one episode, but like towards the end, like him throwing that fucking temper tantrum with the crib is like, excuse me. Like on the lines would call that some low value man behavior, man baby behavior. And so like,
I'm not saying I wanted like, Gemma. Yeah.
But like, like he wasn't like, maybe he wasn't even that great. We just assume that like that Gemma would want, and we see her being like, and then I can go back to Mark. It's like, because Jesus, she just wants to see the sky at this point, like
that was so painful that she could remember, or she had those parts where she I was shocked when that piece of the storyline came in that she could remember her Audi life or whatever. I was like, what? It just made the whole thing so much more diabolical. And so, for her to then be rescued and abandoned and like Mark running off with some uber skinny red-haired girl, like just I was like, no. And that was very low value man behavior. And I already was like off the Mark bus several episodes earlier. So I just, that season was a real slog for me. And I don't love where it ended up at all, but I can see, I also just don't want to participate in this propaganda.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to. And like Ben Stiller, this is a message for you. You need to fight harder in those boardrooms to tell the core story. Like the actual story was already there, beautifully done, and these add-ons, I slap it on later. I didn't appreciate it. That's how it landed for me. And these are the people who are world builders and culture builders, and the McCarthyist era is upon us and upon Hollywood, and I don't appreciate them using, much like Hunger Games, but like using revolution and appropriating the energy of revolutionary spirit in service of just the same old, same old. I don't like it. It's opium for the masses. So I'm not doing it. Not doing it anymore.
That's the soundbite. That one right there. I just have one other thing I want to say, and it is my next creative project, Carmen. I'm hoping to kind of do a little bit less time on the podcast prepping because I'm spending so much time writing my own book. It's a fanfic of a romantasy world that is, I think, I'm worried that it's doing the thing you are describing, and I'm like, not on my watch. I'm going to write it the way I would want it. Am I a writer? I am writing.
I love it. I love it.
World premiere announcement.
I call myself an author. I don't call myself a writer, just so you know, because
that's right.
is a thing that other people do. But I am an author. And so, it's like, you be an author, be a world builder, be a creator. So I interviewed Sophie Strand last month, and I'm going to have it come out again. It's for Body is a Doorway. I want to wait. I just want to wait until all the planets are direct again. So it's going to be mid-April. I'm sitting on it for like a month because I'm like, you know what? I want to give this the most positive energy behind it. I don't want it to like get released as an episode and then kind of like, tumbleweeds, crickets. So I'm going to wait till all the planets are going forward and then I'll release it. But Sophie Strand talks about fiction and romantasy and, one of the ways of enacting like revenge, which I just love. So yes, I fully endorse and support this as like a resourcing thing to do. And I'm very excited for you to announce it.
Yes. And it's so funny. Sophie Strand is very much the, like, I don't know, maybe she like signed my permission slip that this is like a worthy thing. She had like a Myths as Maps workshop last November that I did. And she was like, you can write the most subversive thing and you just like give it some dragons and put some sex in it and people will read it, or whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. I heard you and Asteria talking about it on Asteria. I listened to your episode on Asteria's Convos last night.
Aw.
Yeah. And
did I mention it there too?
Yeah, you do. So I'm like up to speed on subversive smut as, permission slip from Sophie Strand. And I think this is a great revolutionary activity.
Yeah. And I meant to have Sophie. She was having some health issues. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wait and I'm going to reach out to her again once I've like finished it. So like, I kind of have like, I have my little treat. I have my little treat. I'll reach out to Sophie again once it's done and then we can talk about it. Is there anything you want to be like promoting? Aside, I mean, your book is out. But
what I would say is that thank you for there's been episodes here on Stoner Story Witch as well as on Asteria's Convos where you've shouted out to Ruben or to myself or to Quest and certainly to the Numinous Network, and that really matters. And I feel really honored. And I love hearing when people are having discussions, when I'm listening to my friends' podcast episodes, when I hear little phrases that are very numinous-like, it feels awesome. it feels like the constellations, it feels like stars coming out at night, when they twinkle. So I think the thing that I would promote is that people should come and hang out in the Numinous Network. It's a pretty magical place to be, but until you experience it, you don't really understand, like, what are they talking about? Or we think we understand attachment, or we think we get the gist of what contact nutrition is, but it's not actually something you can understand on the mental level, because it's a mirror neuron event. It's an interpersonal neurobiological event. It's a thing that actually happens in your nervous system, your brain, your body, that you have to see and hear in order to understand. So I think people probably hear really beautifully articulated concepts and can sense passion, but until you see it in action in something like an attachment jam or a contact nutrition drop-in, or even our community rituals, like I'm doing Spells for the Apocalypse, a ritual and a remedy every month this year, which I'm like totally stunned how many people I've floated around the calendar so that lots of people in different life circumstances have a chance to attend. And I'm like, why are there like 25 people here on Wednesday morning to do a ritual right now? Like, why do you have time for this? But it's amazing. People they keep coming. We do this like very contact nutrition, dense, rich, magical experience together that you kind of just got to be there. So I guess that's what I would promote, is people should just gift themselves like even a month. And I genuinely, I think there's been so many models of like subscription service in the past, and people like give you bonuses so you don't leave or whatever. And we do the opposite. We remind you, like in the first month, we'll be like, hey, if you were only here for a month, you should cancel now because you're going to get recharged in 3 days or whatever. Like we will be like,
I still get the warnings that like I've been a member for 4 years. I've never canceled. And I still, every month it's like, your subscription's going to renew. And so it's like, oh, if I were to want to cancel, I would do it now to make sure that I'm not going to get roped in.
We do the opposite. We don't try to rope people in. Exactly. We're like, and then there are lots of people who just like come for a little bit. They just come for the like one little thing they wanted, or 2 or 3 things that month they think they can go to, or they just want to do, the contact nutrition course or whatever. They just want that one thing. And then they leave, and then they come back for free weeks. And they just come back for the free week and then they cancel. And that's fine. We're always happy to see them. Or they come back every winter for Yuletide. And it's like homecoming. Like we really love that. So I guess, okay, sorry. Now I'm like talking about it. But the one thing that is coming up that I don't know when you're going to put this out, but in May, we're going to see the return of the True Prosperity Program, which was how I mentioned my bankruptcy. And this was kind of the synthesis of concepts and the kind of journaling practice that I used to deal with my shame and anxiety around money. So a very deeply traumatizing thing to go through bankruptcy. And people have been asking, can you bring it back? But because I did it before there was a Numinous Network, there was this thing called the Numinous School. It's a year-long program. And this was like when I was selling courses independently. And so when I look back at the videos now, which are 10 years old, I'm like, I can't let this be out there in the world anymore. It's time for an update. So every Saturday in May, there's live sessions to go through the month of the True Prosperity Program, which includes like hypnosis and journaling. And then by the time you get to the end, week 4 of doing this practice, this journaling practice and trance work practice every night, we get to the place of the revolutionary spirit of what true prosperity really is, which is about our values, our connections, our attachments, our sense of attunement to ourselves and the more than human realm, and like what money actually, what we want it to represent instead of what it always has. So it's, it's a program to help heal from capitalism and money wounds and shame and loss around money and fear, tons of fear. I had a lot of fear around money as I was coming out of bankruptcy. So so that's happening in May. I think May is a really good time to join.
I fucking love that. I loved the True Prosperity Program. I'm very excited to hear it come. I was literally just telling somebody the other week. I don't remember when, because they were asking me like they were like made a bid. They were like, so yeah, like I kind of want to like learn more about like anti-capitalism because I do the sourdough thing and I'm pretty like I say the quiet part out loud, and they kind of were asking. I was like, and I kind of explained like if you just I was like, even if you just wrote like some like a list of the things that you would make your life better and track like the days that you do it, and even just like write yourself an affirmation every night before you go to bed, because of like you do a lot of so much psychoeducation. Again, we talked in the last episode like the top down and bottom up, and so it's like you have not just oh you're going to do these hypno tracks and you're going to do this journaling, but this is why. It's because your brain is going to be more, like you're going to be able to like take in more of this and be able to like be in choice or whatever the thing is. And so I'm stoked that it's coming back, and I will definitely tell this person it's coming back. I was like, I think I saw Carmen say that she was going to. I mean, honestly, Carmen, if like 5 people, even if like 2 people, I don't know, numbers don't matter. If fucking one person is like, I'm going to check out the Numinous Network because Kristyn it really seems to matter to Kristyn, and I've had like friends like join for free weeks here and there or whatever, but like, I don't know. I don't know. I feel a lot of like I don't know. You've done so much work. Your body of work is so vast and so many different buckets that I'm just like, it's incredible to me what you offer for a very small, like a very, very, very reasonable price. And it's like, and I'm like, so I'm such a broken record. I'm like, oh, Carmen this and Carmen this and Carmen this and Carmen this, but there's something about it all being kind of together and under this Numinous Network umbrella that adds a level of cohesion that like, because, oh my gosh, if I have to, and I do other things too, but like you say, those breakout rooms rack up my nervous system because I'm so used to the way you do it. Or, like I remember the first time I like attempted to like do kind of like a healing thing, and it wasn't somebody who attended your facilitation training. And like, I was getting like kind of anxiety attacks because I was just like, I did not like, there's a different version of me that would have totally been able to tolerate this, like, this thing, but this is like I have like, and now of course I've just learned like, okay, I'm going to like dose the field with my own say. I'm not going to trust them to bring it or whatever, but I'm just but of course like I can't like make anybody do it. So what I can do instead is just like every time I just give credit where credit is due, and so much of because I certainly can relate to, I mean, I was a public school teacher for 10 years. There's a lot about Cobell and Milchick that resonates with me in a way that I'm not happy with. And, so much of the resourcing and companioning of myself and reconnecting to a spiritual and being able to even just claim the word witch, I got because of your blurb in The Spirited Kitchen. Like, and it's, you've gone ahead of me, and and it's like, why would I read all these books on attachment when I can just like skim your Spark Notes, which is more than Spark Notes, like it's so yeah. So I hope that that this podcast success will be measured in Numinous Network subscriptions, and I would be super stoked to have people join and hang out.
And say I heard about it through Stoner Story Witch podcast. That'd be amazing.
Oh, I mean, oh my God, my ego would have a heyday with that. Are you kidding me? If people were like, if I'm at some like attachment jam and somebody private messages me like, oh my gosh, I'm here because of you. You're the Stoner Story Witch. I'd be like, oh my God, hi. Coming. You want to come on my podcast?
Yeah. That's awesome. Awesome. Anyway. Well, thank you for profiling. Thank you for being such a champion, because these are our values, right? We're going to lead with them. And so thank you for being public.
Well, and just thank you for putting out the meaningful work in the world that you're doing. And like, And also just like your Instagram, like sometimes just like even like you're putting out a lot of content for free, on your social media,
Right.
TikToks and Instagrams. Like I really, really love what you do with, you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but like reclaiming like our aging bodies. You're like, I, I hope it's okay. Like I got teary eyed when you were like, I don't want to get plastic surgery. I don't want to change I'm looking forward to growing older because then like I know I'll be able to see my Aunt Debbie again. And I'm like, that's so true. Like, oh my God, the way, like just the ways this over culture, mainstream culture, beauty, diet, whatever is like trying to like keep us from like seeing our ancestors in us. And I'm just and
Yeah.
like you're fucking naming it and you're doing it and it's subversive as fuck and I'm here for it and I love it.
Thank you. I think my next makeup tutorial, like it's going to be like an honest makeup tutorial, is this is how I fix it when I'm on day 3 of my old makeup. And I've got to like get on to a call. But anyway, back to you. This has been a really great conversation, and I feel more settled in my nervous system about it. I feel like, yeah, I need to acknowledge that I spent literally hours in the last couple of months in this disorganized field, and I feel relief being able to bring it to a sense of coherence and acknowledgement and like attunement with you. Thanks for, reanimating stories in a new way, finding the cracks in the wall.
Thank you. You're so welcome. Thank you so much, Carmen, for coming onto the show and for your gracious compassion in letting us use the questions that you have used in the Numinous Network and providing more context and just modeling a way that we can be more real in how we engage with stories. And my hope is that any listeners would hopefully feel some similar sense of maybe being settled, maybe a little bit of challenged, maybe folks have learned something, and maybe even being inspired to have similar conversations with people in your own circle when people are coming in having just finished a season or a series of a show or a book that they're really excited about, of just really hopefully building some intimacy, some emotional intimacy with our beloveds, and also building some like somatic resilience and what it takes to live out our values in this world that continually wants to throw us off our center. I want to thank Matt Shuby for the podcast art, my husband Kevin Carlo for all his help in the creation of the theme song for the podcast, and Aeneas Mitchell and John Williams for their inspiration of Hedwig's theme and Hadestown. And before I sign off, I would like to leave you with a quote from another one of my teachers, Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams, who says, "Love and justice are not two. Without inner change, there can be no outer change. And without collective change, no change matters."
The retelling of old stories, just like Severance is like Twilight Zone. White Lotus is like Fantasy Island and Love Boat mixed together, and we're just cycling back through the 80s, friends. So
okay, yeah.
Anyway, there's some interesting stuff in there for me, but I'm excited to come back. We can jam on anything. We could talk for hours, but
okay.
This has been a slice. Thanks for having me on your pod.
Thank you so much.